People always say, grief does strange things to you. It rewires something deep inside, changes the way you hear silences, the way you read empty rooms. But what happened to me that January night, grief alone doesn't explain it. I've tried. Believe me, I've tried for years. Nuts. My dad died when I was still young enough that most of my memories of him feel borrowed, pieced together. From photographs and things my mom would say on the rare occasion, she felt strong enough to talk about him. A car accident took him. It was sudden and violent, and it left my mom with injuries that never fully healed. She walked with a limp that got worse in cold weather. Every winter I'd watch her move around the kitchen slowly and carefully, and I'd think about him without meaning to. Okay, we stayed in the house he left behind. I think my mom needed to. It was the last solid thing she had of him, and even though some rooms felt heavier than others, we made it work. It was our home. It smelled like him in places, or at least I told myself it did. And when my mom eventually began seeing someone new, I was around 10, things shifted. She was gone more often. I understood it even then, in the way kids understand things they haven't been taught. She was trying to find her way back to some version of a normal life, and I wasn't going to be the reason she didn't. That's when my Uncle Steve started coming around more seriously. He was my dad's brother, and I think he felt a responsibility that nobody asked him to feel. He'd show up with groceries sometimes, or just appear at the door on a Saturday with no real plan, and somehow the day would fill itself. We'd throw a ball around in the backyard until the light changed. He'd sit with me through long movies I probably shouldn't have been watching. He fed our pets when I forgot, which was often. He was easy company in the way that only certain people are, the kind where silence between you doesn't feel like something that needs fixing. Yeah, he gave me things I didn't know I was missing until much later. Not just the obvious things, the presence of a man in the house, someone to ask questions to, but smaller things. The way he'd knock on my bedroom door before coming in. The way he'd actually listen when I talked, even when what I was saying wasn't particularly interesting. He treated me like a person at an age when most adults treat you like a project. By the time I was 16, his visits had slowed. First, it was every few weeks instead of every week, then once a month, then not at all. I noticed, but I didn't push it. My mom would deflect whenever I brought him up. She'd change the subject smoothly, the way she changed subjects about my dad, and I'd learned by then not to pull on those threads. I had my suspicions. People disappear from your life for limited reasons when you're young, and most of them aren't good. Uncle. At 18, the house became mine in every practical sense. My mom had remarried by then, and she and her husband had bought a place together. She'd come by on weeknights sometimes, make dinner, ask me questions I gave half answers to. But mostly it was just me, a big old house and all its sounds. I kept busy the way young men do when they're trying not to feel something. Friends over late, music too loud, the particular exhaustion you chase when you don't want your own thoughts catching up with you. It worked, mostly. The one constant was Jojo. He was a 13-year-old Australian shepherd with a grey muzzle and cloudy eyes, and a walk that had slowed to something closer to a shuffle. But he was loyal in that ancient, unconditional way that only old dogs manage. Every single night, he climbed up onto the bed and settled beside me. And every single morning, he was still there. That dog was the steadiest thing in my life during those years. The heartbeat of that house. Okay? One night in January, the Christmas tree was still standing in the corner of the living room, half its lights burnt out. Because I kept forgetting to deal with it, I woke up somewhere, past 2 in the morning, and reached over out of habit. Jojo wasn't there. I sat up. The room felt different without his weight on the mattress, colder somehow. I wasn't immediately worried. Old dogs wake up at strange hours, need water, need to go outside. I pulled myself out of bed and went downstairs, calling his name in a low voice, so as not to feel ridiculous about it. No response, no click of nails on the floor. I walked through the front room and into the kitchen, and that's where I found him. He was standing at the top of the basement stairs, completely still. Not sitting, not pacing, not sniffing at the gap under the door. Standing, The way a dog stands when every part of its attention is pointed at a single thing. His ears were forward. His body was rigid. And he was staring down into the dark, at the bottom of those stairs, with an intensity I had never seen from him before. I stood there for a moment just watching him. Jojo, he didn't look at me. His tail moved once, a single, slow wag, and then went completely stiff again. Okay, I reached past him and flicked the basement light on. I looked down. Bare concrete floor, the old couch we'd moved down there years ago, the television nobody used anymore. Familiar. Empty. The furnace in the corner, ticking quietly the way it always did. Nothing. I took hold of Jojo's collar and brought him back upstairs with me. I closed the bedroom door and told myself the whole thing was nothing. Old dog. Old instincts probably heard a mouse or the pipes settling. I lay back down and stared at the ceiling, but Jojo wouldn't settle. Every few minutes, I'd feel him lift his head. I'd open my eyes, and he'd be looking toward the bedroom door, with that same focused, pointed attention. Each time he did it, my chest got a little tighter. You spend enough time with an animal, and you learn to read them. Whatever he was tracking, he wasn't done tracking it. After the fourth or fifth time, I stopped pretending. Okay. I'm not someone who frightens easily. I want to be clear about that, not out of pride, but because it matters to understanding what happened next. Growing up without a father teaches you certain things early. You're the one who checks the noise. You're the one who handles whatever needs handling. You don't wait for someone else to go first because there is no one else. It becomes reflex. Again, I got up, went back downstairs. Jojo followed, quieter than I expected for a dog his age. He went straight to the basement door and assumed the same position as before, still alert, listening to something on the other side of that door that I could not hear. I stood beside him and looked at the door for a long moment. I don't fully know what made me do what I did next. Maybe it was the hour. Maybe it was the accumulated weight of the night. But I leaned slightly toward the door and said, "Is anyone there?" My own voice sounded strange in the quiet kitchen. Flat. Too loud. No answer came. I turned on the basement light. I opened the door, and I went down. Those stairs were old wood, and they announced every step with a creak that seemed to get louder the more I wanted to be quiet. The ceiling was low enough that you couldn't see the whole basement until you were halfway down. I kept going anyway. 1 step, 2, 3. On the 4th step, I heard it, a voice, coming from somewhere below and ahead of me. Faint and strained. The way a voice sounds when someone is hurt or exhausted past the point of being able to hide it. Saying my name. Just my name, nothing else. It was my Uncle Steve's voice. I didn't question it. I didn't rationalize it. I recognized it, the way you recognize something that's been stored in a part of you that doesn't forget, the particular rhythm of it, the way he shapes certain sounds. It was him. It was unmistakably him. I ran the rest of the way down. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my jaw. I hit the bottom of the stairs and looked around wildly. The basement was exactly as it always was. Dim, despite the overhead light. Cluttered with things that had accumulated over years and never been sorted through. I called his name. I checked behind the couch, behind the old television, along the back wall. Nothing. No one. There was only one place left. The laundry room in the far corner, its door pulled mostly shut the way it always was. I walked toward it. I was maybe 10 feet away when I heard it, barely a sound, more like the suggestion of one. Something just behind that door. I want to tell you, I opened it. I want to tell you I was brave enough for that. But something happened to me in that moment that I still can't fully describe. It wasn't a thought. It was older than thought. My entire body made a decision before my mind had any say in it. And I was running. Up the stairs, through the kitchen, up the main stairs to the 2nd floor. I didn't stop to turn off the light. I barely managed to pull the basement door shut behind me. When I got to my bedroom, I locked the door and stood with my back against it, breathing. Jojo had followed me up. He stood in the middle of the room, looking at me. And then he did something he hadn't done in months. He barked. 3 sharp, urgent barks that sounded almost like alarm. I sank down onto the floor and pulled him close. Then I called my mom. I called her 4 times before she picked up. When she did, her voice was thick with sleep, and I didn't give her time to fully wake up before I was talking, half whispering, telling her everything. Jojo at the stairs, the voice, the laundry room. I told her I knew it was Uncle Steve because I knew his voice. I had grown up listening to that voice, and you don't forget a thing like that. She went quiet in a way that I recognized. It was the quiet she used when she was deciding something. Then she told me Uncle Steve had been diagnosed with cancer not long before he stopped visiting. It had moved quickly. He was gone within a year of his diagnosis. She hadn't told me because she couldn't bring herself to say it, not to me, and after everything I'd already lost. She thought she was protecting me. She thought silence was a kindness. I barely heard the last part. "Mom," I said. "He's in the basement right now." There was a pause that lasted a beat too long for comfort. When she spoke again, her voice was calm and deliberate in a way that told me she wasn't entirely certain what to say. "Listen to me," she said. "If you believe someone is in that house, you need to hang up and call the police. Right now." 2 officers arrived. I let them in and walked them straight to the basement. I didn't wait upstairs like they suggested. I went down with them and walked them through everything. Where I'd stood, what I'd heard, every corner, I'd already checked. Then I pointed to the laundry room door. They opened it, nothing. The machine sitting exactly where they always sat. The shelf above with its bottles and boxes. The bare floor. Completely, entirely, ordinarily empty. They searched the rest of the house after that. First floor, second floor, every closet, every room. They were thorough and professional and kind about it, which somehow made it worse. When they left, I could tell from the careful neutrality of their expressions what they believed had happened. I called my mom back. She answered immediately, which told me she hadn't gone back to sleep. I gave her the short version. She listened. And then she said softly that the mind does extraordinary things when grief finally catches up to it, that maybe this was something I'd been carrying for a long time, without knowing. "You're right," I said. "I'm sure that's it. I wasn't sure at all. I know what I heard. I know the difference between a voice that exists and one that doesn't, and I know my uncle's voice from years of afternoons in that backyard, years of car rides and dinner tables, and the particular way he said my name whenever I had done something that made him laugh. That was not a hallucination. And Jojo was there at that door before I ever came downstairs. He heard something first. He was the beginning of it, and no explanation I've ever been given accounts for him. The weeks after were hard in a way that's difficult to articulate. It wasn't fear exactly, or not just fear. It was more like the house had become a place with a second layer I hadn't been aware of before, and now I couldn't stop being aware of it. I stopped going near the basement door without a reason. I started leaving more lights on. I slept lighter than I ever had, and more than once I woke up in the middle of the night and lay very still in the dark, just listening. Jojo never stood at those stairs again. Whatever he'd heard that night, it didn't come back. Or at least he didn't hear it again. I thought about that often. I still do. My mom sold the house about a year later. She didn't explain her reasoning in any detail, and I didn't press her. Some decisions don't need to be explained when both people already understand the shape of the thing. I drove past it once, a few years after that, new family. Lights on in rooms that had always been dark when I lived there. A bicycle on the front porch. Life moving through the place the way it's supposed to. I slowed down and looked at it for a moment. Then I kept driving. Some things you leave behind without looking too closely at what you're leaving. Maybe that's what my mom figured out years before I did. Maybe it's the only way you keep moving forward. I just hope whoever lives there now never wakes up in the middle of the night to find their dog standing at the top of those stairs, staring down, listening to something in the dark that no one else can hear.